Here's what everyone missed about the National Bank Open in Toronto this week. Alex Eala wasn't supposed to be standing where she is right now, and neither was Belinda Bencic, but for completely different reasons. And that collision matters more than the rankings suggest. The Philippines' rising force just claimed her first WTA title in Washington days earlier. She's carrying a 7-match winning streak into this fourth-round clash. And she's doing it all at 20 years old in a tournament that historically belonged to established European veterans and hardened American grinders. But across the net waits a former National Bank Open champion who has forgotten more about surviving Toronto's hard courts than Eala has learned. This is the story of two completely different trajectories meeting at the exact moment when one of them is ascending and the other is desperately clinging to relevance. And what happens between them will tell us far more about tennis in 2026 than any ranking ever could. If you really love Alex Eala, then comment now Eala 100%. Let me establish what we actually know about this matchup before the speculation takes over. Alex Eala walked into this tournament as the 20th seed, having risen from the qualifying rounds just weeks before Washington to claim her career-defining title. The way she won that title matters. She didn't steamroll anyone. She scrapped through 3 consecutive matches that went into deciding sets. She saved break points on her serve when pressure mounted, and she beat 3 different opponents who all knew how to punish a 20-year-old's inconsistency. Then she came to Toronto and did it again. Against Katie McNally on Friday night, she faced nearly identical pressure and early break deficit, a second set where the American rallied to force a tie-break situation, and a moment where everything could have collapsed on center court in front of a crowd of Filipino families waving flags and screaming her name. She won 6-3, 5-7, 6-4 in 2 hours and 39 minutes, and the scoreline almost hides how narrow the margin was. McNally had opportunities to close out that match. On any other night, maybe she does. This is crucial because it tells you something about IGA that the winning streak obscures. Her dominance is built not on overwhelming talent, but on relentless refusal to break when the pressure applies. She's not the most powerful hitter on tour. Her serve isn't reaching the speeds that Ons Jabeur or Aryna Sabalenka generate. Her forehand doesn't have the topspin load that allows players like Iga Swiatek to dictate entire rallies. What Iga has instead is an uncanny ability to read court angles and position herself for the next ball before it even leaves her opponent's racket. She plays tennis like someone solving a puzzle in real time, and the longer a match goes, the more complete her picture becomes. At 20 years old, that's not normal. Most players need 5 or 6 years to develop that kind of spatial awareness. But this is also the weakness that Belinda Bencic will try to exploit. Bencic just finished a 3-hour, 24-minute war against Taylor Townsend, a match that demanded everything from her physically and mentally. She's 30 years old. She's played nearly every major tournament for over a decade, and she knows exactly what fatigue feels like in a deciding set. The fact that she won that match, taking it 6-7, 5-7, 6-4, 6-4, says something important about her. Bencic is a player who peaks in survival situations. When the pressure is maximum, when the stakes demand excellence, Bencic has historically stepped into that space and refused to yield. She's a former National Bank Open champion here. A player who has reached the quarterfinals of this exact tournament 3 times, and she understands the architectural demands of Toronto in August better than almost anyone still competing. The hard court surface here is fast, but not brutally so. It's the kind of court that rewards aggression without punishing indecision. What that means is that players who can dictate the first 4 shots of a rally, the serve, the return, the third shot, the fourth shot, tend to dominate. Bencic is exceptional at dictating through aggressive baseline play and refined court sense. She's less concerned with overwhelming you than with positioning herself so that your only option is to either hit a low percentage winner or commit an error. Against a 30-year-old Bencic who has just pushed Townsend to the absolute limit, the question becomes, does Eala have the offensive firepower to not play Bencic's game? Because if she does, if Eala tries to match Bencic's patience and tactical intelligence and court positioning, then we're looking at a match where physical fatigue starts to matter. Bencic has played nearly double the amount of tennis that Eala has at this level. She's exhausted from 90 minutes of tie-break tennis against one of the most resilient players on tour. And Eala, riding this magnificent 7-match streak and the adrenaline of a first title, might actually have more explosiveness in her legs for 60 minutes than Bencic does in that early stretch of the match. Here's the tension nobody's talking about. Ella's greatest strength is her ability to construct points and solve problems. Bencic's greatest strength at this moment in her career, after that Townsend match, is that she's proven she can absorb punishment and find her way out. These are not mutually exclusive skills. It's possible for both of these things to be true simultaneously, and that's what makes this match unpredictable. If you're betting purely on experience, Bencic wins every time. She's been to this stage 100 times. She knows the pressure. She knows the expectations. She knows what happens when you're fatigued and fighting for a quarterfinal spot against someone who's riding momentum. But, if you're betting on raw explosiveness and the kind of hunger that comes from proving something to yourself and to an entire country watching at home, then Eala has every chance to catch Bencic when she's at her most vulnerable. Let's talk about what happened in the first 2 rounds here, because both players revealed something essential about their current state. Eala beat Magdalena Frech and then Jacqueline Christian before the McNally match. Those are high-quality opponents, but neither of them pressed her in the way that McNally did. Against McNally, we saw Ella's vulnerability for the first time in the streak. She struggled to find her serve rhythm in the second set. She was hitting first serves at lower speeds than her average. She was double faulting at moments where previous matches showed her executing under pressure. McNally exploited that window. She broke Eala once in the second set, and then she broke her again when Eala was serving for the match at 5-4. That second break, when Eala was 1 game away from moving to the quarterfinals, is the kind of moment that reveals character. Eala immediately recommitted. She broke back at love in the third set and won 3 straight games to close out the match. But, the fact that she had that vulnerability there, that she needed to dig out of it, matters because Bencic is one of the few players on the women's tour who specializes in capitalizing on exactly that kind of window. Bencic's path to the 4th round tells a different story. She beat Magdalena Frech in the first round, easy enough, and then she faced Barbara Krejcikova, which is never straightforward against a player with Kvitova's doubles intelligence and tactical sophistication. Bencic won that match decisively, 6-3, 6-4, which suggests that her movement is sharp and her tactical execution is clean. Then the Townsend match happened. That 3-hour 24-minute affair revealed something about Bencic that's both encouraging and concerning, depending on your perspective. Encouraging, she refused to wilt. She saved the first set on her 3rd or 4th opportunity. She survived a second set tiebreak against one of the toughest players to beat on the WTA Tour, and she broke Townsend's spirit in the 3rd set once she'd adjusted to the rhythm. Concerning, she's going to be physically compromised. You don't play 94 minutes of tennis in the last 2 sets alone and feel fresh the next day. Your legs are going to be heavier. Your first serve percentage is going to dip. Your shot-making margin will contract because your body is working with less fuel in the tank than it did yesterday. This is where IGA's hunger becomes a tangible advantage. Not her hunger metaphorically, but literally. She's had easier matches and less cumulative court time. She'll feel springier in her movement. She'll get back to more balls because she won't be working from a deficit of fatigue. Against a Bencic who has just played one of the longest matches of her season, IGA should be thinking about one thing: accelerating. Play faster tennis than Bencic wants to play. Make her hit more balls than her legs want to. Force her to make decisions on the run instead of in her comfort zone of the baseline. If IGA tries to play Bencic's game, patience, positioning, construction, then Bencic's experience and court intelligence will eventually prevail. Probably in the 2nd or 3rd set when IGA's early aggression fades and they settle into a grinding rhythm. But here's what IGA understands that most young players her age haven't learned yet. You don't have to beat someone at their own game. You just have to beat them at yours. If IGA plays aggressive baseline tennis, if she takes calculated risks on her forehand, if she hits more first serves at high velocity and fewer second serves into the court, then she transforms this match from a tactical chess game where Bencic has the advantage into an offensive showcase where IGA's youth and explosiveness matter. That's the blueprint. That's the way IGA wins this match. And that's exactly what makes this match so compelling to watch, because IGA has now played enough matches in this winning streak to know that blueprint exists. The question is whether she'll have the courage to execute it under the weight of 7 straight wins, a first title, a quarter-final berth at stake, and 200,000 Filipino fans watching from home. Belinda Bencic has reached the quarterfinals of this tournament 3 times. She knows what it feels like to advance past this stage. She knows what it feels like to lose it as well, which is equally important because that experience teaches you what mistakes to avoid. She's the betting favorite for very good reasons. Experience matters enormously in tennis at this level, and Bencic has more of it than IGA by a factor of probably 5 or 6 across her entire career. But favoritism in tennis is never guaranteed. It's just the most likely outcome given the available information. The available information here is that IGA is carrying a 7-match streak. She's demonstrated the ability to win close matches. She's playing in front of a crowd that's emotionally invested in her success. And she's young enough that her body is operating at peak efficiency. Bencic is fatigued from a marathon match. She's older and has less margin for error, but she's also operating from a place of absolute clarity. She knows exactly what she needs to do because she's been here countless times before. The prediction, if you're looking for one, has to acknowledge that Bencic's experience and tactical mastery make her the more likely winner. Her resume at this tournament is undeniable. Her ability to construct points is genuinely elite. Her movement, even tired, is still superior to most players on the women's tour. But there's a genuine path for Eala here. There's a real scenario where the young Filipino player with a 7-match streak and the fresh legs and the crowd support decides that today is the day she proves she belongs not just in the main draw, but in the quarterfinals of a WTA 1000 tournament. That scenario requires Eala to play her game with confidence, to trust her explosiveness, and to understand that Bencic, for all her excellence, is also human and also tired. If Eala executes that plan, if she plays aggressive tennis and doesn't get seduced into Bencic's slower, more deliberate rhythm, then this match becomes competitive in a way that the rankings suggest it shouldn't be. That's not a guarantee. That's just tennis at this level. The outcome is rarely written in advance. What we know for certain is that Alex Eala has fundamentally changed the trajectory of her career this week. Whether she beats Bencic today or loses to her, the narrative is already in motion. The Philippines has a genuine tennis player now, someone with the tactical intelligence to solve problems, the physicality to compete against tour veterans, and the mental toughness to win matches when they're decided by details rather than overwhelming dominance. Bencic, meanwhile, continues to prove that age is not necessarily a factor in women's tennis when your tennis understanding is as complete as hers. But one of them will advance, and that advancement will say something important about where women's tennis is headed in 2026. It will either say that experience and tactical mastery still determine outcomes, or it will say that new blood with hunger and explosiveness can close generational gaps faster than anyone expected. That's what's actually at stake in this match beyond the ranking points and the quarter-final spot. It's the question of whether tennis is evolving toward younger, fresher, more explosive talent, or whether the fundamentals of court intelligence and experience remain impossible to overcome. The answer, in a few hours, will be decided on a hard court in Toronto with a crowd full of Filipinos watching their country's representative try to prove something remarkable is possible.